Morning light filtered through the tall windows of Crestwood High, washing the hallways in a pale gold that made every locker gleam like a metal spine. Students flooded the corridors with a mixture of laughter, grumbling, and the sound of sneakers squeaking on polished floors. It was the kind of ordinary school morning that, on the surface, felt harmless, familiar. Yet somehow under that bright and buzzing normalcy, something uneasy stirred, like a faint vibration that only a few people could sense. For Anna Raymond, it was immediate. She stepped onto the second-floor hallway clutching her travel mug of coffee, her lesson plan folder tucked beneath one arm, her hair still slightly wind-tossed from the outside chill. Her eyes swept the corridor with the instinctive precision of a teacher who had learned to read the room before stepping into it. Usually, she could pinpoint the clusters of gossipers, the procrastinators hiding their undone homework, the couples sneaking a moment before the bell. Today, however, her gaze locked on a single figure moving with a strange, fragile tension. Evan Morales walked with his shoulders caved inward as though bracing against a cold wind no one else felt. His backpack straps were pulled tight, knuckles whitened from gripping them too hard. His steps were quick but hesitant, like someone tiptoeing across thin ice and hoping it wouldn't crack beneath them. When a group of taller students passed too close, he flinched, not dramatically, but just enough for Anna to notice. And then she saw the reason. Far down the hall, descending like a slow-forming storm, came Tyler Brooks and his two closest friends, Owen and Marcus. They didn't rush, didn't hunt. No, their pace was far too casual for that. They moved with the confident, unthinking swagger of boys who had never been told no loudly enough to believe it. Tyler's baseball cap was tilted back, revealing a smirk that came too easily. Owen wore the same hoodie he had for the last 4 days, hood half up like he lived inside it. Marcus walked with his hands in his pockets, observing silently in a way that always made Anna uneasy. He was the kind of quiet follower who didn't need to throw a punch to feel responsible for one. As they walked, the three boys shared a private joke, something inaudible to Anna but clearly not meant for Evan's ears. Tyler's eyes flicked forward, landing on the smaller boy ahead of them. The grin sharpened. Anna felt her stomach knot. She took a step forward, meaning to intercept, but the morning bell trilled overhead. The hallway erupted. Hundreds of bodies surged toward classrooms. The tide swallowed them all. Evan, Tyler, the tension hanging between them. Everything was swept away into the flood of backpacks and chatter. Anna stood still for a moment, watching the last glimpses of each boy vanish down separate wings of the building. She told herself she was imagining things. Teachers often did. Schools bred more paranoia than most places. And yet, as she entered her classroom, her fingers lingered on the doorknob a second too long. Something wasn't right. The morning unfolded as usual, at least on the surface. Attendance was taken, notes scribbled, discussions sparked and quietly died in that typical rhythm of teenagers pretending to care more or less than they truly did. But even as Anna stood at the whiteboard explaining the social tensions that fueled early American colonial conflicts, part of her mind lingered outside the classroom door, replaying the worried tilt of Evan's shoulders and the predatory slowness of Tyler's grin. She noticed things like that, small things. She always had. It was a trait that made her good at teaching, good at reaching the students who lived in the quiet margins. But today she felt powerless to act on the instinct. She couldn't accuse without proof, couldn't intervene without cause. She could only hope she was wrong. During third period, as sunlight shifted angles across her desk and the hallway beyond began to quiet, the uneasy hum inside her chest returned with greater intensity. Something had changed. The building's atmosphere felt taut, stretched thin like a rubber band pulled too far. She looked at the clock. 10:24 a.m. Minutes later, the muffled thrum of footsteps and rising noise seeped through the door. Not ordinary hallway chatter, this was sharper, shriller. A ripple of excitement mixed with alarm. Students in her classroom glanced toward the door, exchanging looks that spread faster than whispers. A knock came quick and panicked. When she opened the door, a breathless sophomore blurted, "Ms. Raymond, there was a fight." The words hit like a slap. Anna's heart dropped. "Where?" she demanded. "Second floor hallway. 2 guys." Someone said it was Evan Morales and she didn't need to hear the rest. Her pulse thundered. She rushed down the hallway, her footsteps echoing sharply. Other teachers poked their heads out of classrooms. Some followed, others frowned and shut their doors. When she reached the main hallway intersection, she found students clustering in tight pockets, talking in feverish bursts. A janitor was already setting up a caution sign where something, she hoped not blood, had smeared across the tiles. A security guard waved her off from approaching the scene directly. "It's handled, Ms. Raymond," he said with a firm but polite tone teachers were all too familiar with when administration wanted them out of the way. "Was anyone badly hurt?" she asked. "Not seriously." Relief washed over her, but only for a moment. It was replaced by dread when she overheard snippets from a group of students nearby. "Dude," Evan just snapped. Like snapped? "Yeah, he attacked Tyler out of nowhere." "No, I saw the video. Tyler barely did anything." "Bro, Evan lost it. He went crazy." "Video." The word carved itself sharply into her thoughts. "Can I see it?" she asked. A boy nodded, pulling up the clip on his phone. It began mid-motion. Evan sprawled on the floor, arms over his head. Tyler above him, fist raised. Someone shouted. The clip cut off. It was less than 10 seconds. A hollow feeling opened in Anna's chest. This wasn't proof of anything, only a fragment. A carefully framed photograph of a far larger story. Despite the chaos, despite her racing pulse, her mind registered one question with crystal clarity. Why does it start here? She watched it again and again. Students waiting for her reaction grew impatient, then uninterested, drifting away. She stood rooted to the floor, eyes fixed on the frozen final frame of the video. Evan curled like a wounded animal. Tyler looming. No beginning, only an ending. By lunch, the entire school seemed to have adopted a single narrative. Evan was the aggressor. Evan lost control. Evan deserved to be punished. Rumors spread with the ease of wildfire and the cruelty of smoke. Suffocating, inescapable. Every time Anna heard someone say, "Evan attacked him first," she remembered the way he had flinched that morning, the way he walked too fast, the way he braced himself. Guilt prickled her skin. She had seen warning signs and did nothing. By late afternoon, she found herself walking toward the administrative wing with heavy steps. A meeting had been scheduled, hastily, urgently, to discuss disciplinary action. Evan's parents were on their way. The principal, Mr. Donnelly, had already made his stance clear. Violence could not be tolerated, regardless of circumstances. When Anna arrived, teachers and administrators were reviewing the student-captured video. Some shook their heads with disappointment. Others muttered frustration. "At least Tyler didn't fight back too hard," one teacher said. "The Morales kid has been quiet, but you never know," another murmured. "He's probably been building up anger for years. Is that any excuse to attack someone?" Anna felt the room tilt around her. This wasn't analysis. This wasn't inquiry. This was confirmation bias, groupthink, the rush to fill in blanks with assumptions that fit the limited evidence. Evidence. That's when she realized something crucial. Nobody had asked to see the school's security footage. Not a single person. Her pulse hammered as she interrupted the discussion. "Excuse me," she said. "Where is the official footage?" A few heads turned. Most were confused. "You mean the video circulating?" a teacher replied. "No." Anna held her ground. "The hallway cameras. Crestwood records 48 hours at all times. Why aren't we reviewing that?" Silence. A few glances shot between staff members. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Someone else cleared their throat. Mr. Donnelly frowned as though the thought hadn't even crossed his mind, and perhaps it truly hadn't. "Ms. Raymond," he began, choosing his words carefully. "The student video is quite clear. It shows Evan on the floor and Tyler." "It shows 10 seconds, Anna said sharply. 10 seconds without context. That is not a beginning. It is barely an ending." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with conviction. A long moment stretched. Then Donnelly sighed, conceding with visible reluctance. "If you insist," he said. "But if the security footage confirms the same sequence of events, our disciplinary recommendation will remain." Anna nodded, but her thoughts were already several steps ahead. She didn't know what she would find. She didn't dare make assumptions. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. Evan didn't look like a boy who started fights. He looked like a boy who had been running from something for far too long. As the committee dispersed and the meeting adjourned temporarily until more evidence could be reviewed, Anna walked toward the security office with a strange mixture of dread and purpose twisting inside her chest. The hallway echoed with the distant clang of lockers closing and the hum of after-school chatter. But beneath it all, she sensed the quiet turning of gears, something inevitable unfolding. And so, as she reached for the door to the security office, the story she thought she knew began to unravel. The past was no longer just a memory of a troubled morning. It was a trail of moments pointing toward something hidden beneath the surface, waiting to come fully into view. She pushed the door open, and this is where the next chapter begins, where truth finally starts to speak for itself. The security office at Crestwood High always smelled faintly of old carpet and overheated electronics. It wasn't an unpleasant smell, just one that clung to the memory like dust clings to forgotten bookshelves. When Anna pushed the door open, the dim fluorescent lights flickered once before stabilizing, buzzing softly like insects trapped in glass. Behind a wide desk, Officer Hensley looked up from a stack of incident reports, raising a single inquisitive eyebrow at her sudden appearance. He was a man built like a retired linebacker, still carrying the weight of his former profession in his shoulders but softening around the middle from years of sedentary work. His salt and pepper beard made him look sterner than he truly was. He blinked twice at the sight of Anna, surprised but not startled. Teachers rarely visited the security room unless something had already gone very wrong. "Ms. Raymond?" he said, leaning back in his chair. "Everything all right?" For a moment she couldn't answer. Her thoughts were a storm of urgency, fear, and determination all clashing together. She felt suddenly aware of how fast her heart was beating, of how the hallway behind her seemed to hush as though the school itself was leaning in to listen. "I need to see the footage," she said finally. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied as she continued. "The second-floor hallway, 10:17 this morning." Hensley let out a slow exhale, one that told her he had been expecting this request sooner or later. Maybe he'd even wondered what took her so long. "You're talking about the fight," he said. "Yes. And the principal approved this?" "Yes," she lied, or rather half-lied. Donnelly had allowed her to pursue the footage, though reluctantly and with disclaimers she chose not to remember in detail. Hensley studied her face for a long moment, trying to decide whether to challenge her, but something in her eyes must have convinced him. Without another word, he pushed aside the stack of reports and turned toward the row of monitors flickering with live hallway views. The screens were divided into grids: classrooms, staircases, lunchrooms, intersections. Each frame a small square of the world these children inhabited every day. Most showed nothing more than students filtering out for after-school activities, chatting or dragging piles of books as though climbing invisible mountains. Hensley typed in a password, then navigated through a menu until he pulled up the archived feed. "There," he said. 10 minutes before and after, right?" "Yes," she said, though the truth was she wanted to see even earlier. Something told her the story didn't begin at 10:17. But 10 minutes was enough to confirm or dismantle the narrative that had already spread across the school like wildfire. He clicked play. The screen filled with familiar hallways, lockers stretching like blue metallic ribs along both walls, a few stray students wandering to class, custodians pushing carts. The hum of the air conditioner filtered faintly through the speakers. Anna leaned in, hardly breathing. There was Evan. He entered the frame on the far right, moving with that guarded shuffle she had noticed in the morning. His hair was slightly messy, his shoulders drawn inward as though trying to fold into himself. He walked close to the lockers, hugging the wall like someone trying to stay unnoticed. A second later, Tyler and his friends appeared at the opposite end, moving in the opposite direction. Anna's stomach twisted. There was no mistaking Tyler's posture. Broad, confident, relaxed. He gestured animatedly as he spoke to Owen and Marcus, oblivious to the camera or anyone else around him. Owen tossed a bottle of soda from hand to hand, catching it lazily with a grin. Marcus walked with that eerie, quiet stoicism, eyes mostly on the floor but flicking up occasionally to track Evan's movement. They noticed him at the same moment. Tyler smirked. Owen said something. She couldn't hear the words, but the curl of his lips suggested cruelty. Marcus didn't speak, but his gaze sharpened, drawn to Evan like a wolf noticing a lone lamb. Anna felt her breath catch. This wasn't a chance encounter. This wasn't two boys clashing randomly in a hallway. This was something else entirely. Something that made her fists clench involuntarily. On the screen, Evan reached the midpoint of the hall. Tyler and his friends adjusted their pace to intercept him. Not overtly, not enough to appear intentional. But Anna saw it. The subtle shift in direction, the shared glance, the deliberate spacing to cut him off. When they neared, Tyler made the first move. A bump of the shoulder, not violent, but sharp enough to make Evan stumble half a step. Evan murmured something that sounded like, "sorry." Though the audio was too faint to confirm, he kept walking. Tyler laughed. Owen followed with a flick of Evan's backpack strap, sending it sliding halfway off one shoulder. Evan scrambled to fix it. Marcus stepped slightly aside, not participating but not stopping anything either. His neutrality felt like complicity. The camera angle captured everything with cold precision. Evan tried to move around them, but Tyler stepped in front of him again. A game of blocking, testing boundaries. Evan's breathing visibly quickened. The poor boy looked like a trapped bird flapping against a window pane. Then Owen grabbed Evan's backpack with more force, yanking it until it tore from Evan's grip and fell to the ground. Books spilled out, textbooks, notebooks, loose papers fluttering like panicked birds. Evan knelt, hands shaking, scooping up his belongings. Tyler's foot nudged a book further away. Owen snickered. Marcus glanced around nervously, checking whether anyone else was near. When he realized they were effectively alone in the stretch of hallway, he relaxed. The scene unfolded like a cruel ritual. Evan kept muttering apologies. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't push back. He didn't shout for help. He just picked up his books. Anna's chest tightened painfully. She had known something was off. She had known, but she hadn't acted in time. And now, watching it unfold in grainy footage, she felt a guilt so sharp it could slice through bone. Then came the moment that would change everything. Evan stood with his arms full of books. Tyler shoved him, harder this time, much harder. Evan stumbled backward into the path of a student who wasn't paying attention, and their collision sent both boys sprawling. Tyler fell too, hitting the ground in a tangle of limbs. The camera captured the exact moment Tyler's face twisted. Not in pain, but in humiliation. And humiliation, in boys like Tyler, sparked rage faster than gasoline on fire. He scrambled up, fury igniting behind his eyes. Owen swore. Marcus backed a step. Evan, terrified, tried to stand but slipped on one of his own papers. Tyler lunged. And that was when the student-made video must have begun. Hensley paused the footage. The room felt colder than before. The hum of the fluorescent lights buzzed like static in Anna's ears. "Well," Hensley said quietly, rubbing the back of his neck, "that's not what was spreading online." "No," Anna whispered. "It's not." She had expected something, but not this. Not such a stark reversal of the story being told. Not such painfully clear proof that the child everyone was ready to condemn had only ever been trying to escape. Anger rose in her chest. Not loud, but deep, steady, molten. Anger at Tyler, at the friends who stood by, at the students who assumed, at the faculty who didn't question enough, at herself for noticing the signs and still letting him walk away alone that morning. "We need to show this to the disciplinary committee," she said, her voice steadier now, hardening with resolve. "Immediately." Hensley nodded. "I'll export the file." While he worked, Anna stood staring at the screen where Evan's frightened face was frozen mid-motion. She felt a tightness in her throat that she forced down before the tears could rise. Teachers didn't cry in front of security officers. Teachers didn't cry in professional settings. But today she felt dangerously close. When Hensley handed her the small USB drive, it felt heavier than its size should allow. Heavy with truth, with responsibility, with the weight of a boy's reputation and future pressed into half an ounce of plastic. "Thank you," she said, gripping it tightly. "You're doing the right thing," he replied. She nodded, but she wasn't sure. The right thing sometimes came too late. The right thing sometimes didn't undo the damage already done. Rumors were fast. Shame was faster. As Anna walked out of the security office, the hallway outside had grown quieter. Most students had gone home or to after-school clubs. The setting sun cast long golden stripes across the floor, making the school feel almost peaceful, an ironic calm after the chaos of the morning. She headed toward the administrative wing, her footsteps echoing. With every step, she thought of Evan's pale face, of his trembling hands, of the way he curled defensively in the student shot video. She thought of the suspension form already drafted. She imagined his parents receiving a call that painted their son as an aggressor. She imagined the fear in their voices, the confusion, the shame. But she also imagined the moment when they would see the truth. That hope kept her moving. By the time she reached the committee room, the members were already assembling again, their faces drawn with fatigue and impatience. Principal Donnelly looked up with a sort of resigned dread, as though expecting this to be another bureaucratic obstacle in an already long day. "Ms. Raymond," he said, shuffling papers, "I hope this won't take long." "It won't," she replied, "but it will change everything." She plugged the USB into the laptop. The screen flickered, the hallway appeared, and truth began to unfold. When the footage ended, silence filled the room like a held breath. Someone murmured, "We were wrong." Someone else whispered, "God, that poor kid." Donnelly pinched the bridge of his nose, visibly shaken. His voice, when it finally came, was strained. "Ms. Raymond, thank you." But Anna wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on Evan, sitting quietly in the corner, shrinking into his hoodie like he wanted to disappear. His eyes were red but dry, eyes that had learned long ago that crying didn't help. When he met her gaze, something flickered. Hope, disbelief, relief, fear, all tangled together like threads pulled too tight. She gave him a small nod. It was the beginning of something different. A crack in the wall that had stood between who he truly was and who everyone assumed him to be. Yet Anna knew this was not the end of the story. Not even close. Because truth alone didn't mend a broken narrative. Justice had to follow. And justice, she feared, would be messy. Outside the committee room, the last rays of sunlight slipped away from the hallway floor, leaving only the faint reflection of overhead lights. The night would be long, the aftermath longer. And as she stepped out of the room, she felt the faint tremor of what was coming next. The confrontation, the consequences, the unraveling of lies that had held too much power for too long. A storm was gathering. The corridor outside the committee room felt strangely hollow, as if all sound had been temporarily scooped from the air, leaving only an echo of something heavy and unresolved. When the door clicked shut behind her, Anna stood still for a long moment, her hand resting lightly on the knob, as though the wood beneath her palm still vibrated with the shaken voices and silent realizations of those inside. The hallway lights flickered once, soft, almost apologetic, before settling into a steady glow. It cast a pale sheen across the tiled floor, stretching long shadows behind her. She exhaled, though she couldn't remember holding her breath. The weight of the USB drive no longer tugged at her pocket, but the weight of its contents lingered in her bones. Behind that door, lives had shifted their axis. Evan, whose world had nearly collapsed beneath a lie. The faculty, who had nearly condemned him without pausing to question. Tyler, whose carefully curated image would now be peeled back to reveal the truth hidden beneath. And Anna herself, caught between guilt, duty, and a fierce instinct she didn't know she possessed until now. She stepped forward, her shoes tapping the floor lightly. A janitor was pushing his cart slowly down the far end of the hall, humming faintly to himself. The soft clatter of mop handles seemed too ordinary for a day like this. Everything felt strange in its normalcy. As she walked, a part of her expected the building to look different somehow. As if walls should shift to reflect the shift in narrative, or ceilings should lower under the weight of revelation. But a school was just a skeleton of metal and plaster. It held secrets, witnessed them, but it did not change for them. Turning a corner, she nearly collided with Ms. Turner from the counseling office, who looked frazzled, her glasses slipping to the tip of her nose. "Oh, Anna. Sorry," Turner blurted, clutching a folder to her chest. "Did the meeting go well?" Anna hesitated. "It went honestly." Turner's eyes widened with interest, but Anna continued walking before the woman could pry further. She wasn't ready to share the details, not until the system formally addressed them, not until the school acknowledged the truth publicly, not until Evan was safe from further harm. Not just from rumors, but from the boys who had cornered him in that hallway earlier today. Her pace slowed as she neared her classroom. Its door closed, its windows dark. She placed her hand on the doorframe, absorbing the calm of an empty room. She considered staying there for a moment, letting the silence settle her. But silence wouldn't help. Silence was what let boys like Evan carry pain quietly until it grew too sharp to hide. Silence was what let boys like Tyler flourish unchecked. She walked past the classroom instead, heading toward the stairwell. She needed a moment of open air. The sky. Something bigger than these walls. The steps echoed under her feet as she descended. Through the large second-floor windows, the late afternoon sun had melted into amber, painting the sky in streaks of orange and violet. Students scattered across the courtyard, backpacks slung loosely, laughter floating up like bubbles bursting against the glass. It was surreal to watch them, so carefree, so unaware of how close the world around them had come to failing one of their peers. At the bottom of the stairs, she pushed through the side exit door and stepped into the cool air. The wind met her with a soft sigh, brushing loose strands of her hair across her face. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, letting the crispness settle in her lungs. The school grounds felt peaceful, deceptive in their simplicity. Birds perched on the chain-link fence. A gust sent dry leaves tumbling across the concrete. She found a bench beneath the tall oak tree near the parking lot and sat, placing her bag beside her. Her pulse had slowed since leaving the committee room, but her mind churned with questions, with the enormity of what needed to be done next. She replayed the footage in her mind. The shove, the spilled books, the panic in Evan's movements. Each frame etched itself deeper the more she thought about it. It was a miracle, really, that the school had cameras with clear angles. Without them, Evan would have been disciplined, labeled, damaged, and boys like him rarely recovered easily from those marks. She wondered how many kids walked the halls of Crestwood carrying quiet stories no one had bothered to uncover. How many had been misunderstood? How many had been misjudged? She wondered how many teachers had felt the same instinct she had that morning but turned away because the system demanded evidence before compassion. "Ms. Raymond?" The voice was soft, hesitant, and familiar. She turned. Evan stood a few feet away, his backpack slung loosely now, though she noticed the strap had torn where Owen had yanked it earlier. His hoodie sleeves were pushed up unevenly, revealing faint red marks across his forearms. His cheeks were still flushed with the remnants of earlier humiliation or fear, or both. He looked younger than he had in the committee room, small, vulnerable, like a child who wasn't sure whether he was allowed to stand in the open. "Evan," she said gently, "are you all right?" He nodded too quickly. "Yeah, I guess. He avoided eye contact, staring instead at the ground near his shoes. "Can I sit?" "Of course." He lowered himself onto the bench at the far end, leaving a polite distance, though she sensed he wanted closeness more than he wanted space. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind tugged at the branches overhead, scattering tiny acorns around their feet. Cars passed along the distant street, their engines muffled. Finally, Evan spoke. "Thank you." "For what?" she asked softly, though she already knew. "For believing me." Her chest tightened. "Evan, I didn't believe you because I wanted to. I believed you because something wasn't right, and because it's my job to ask questions when something feels wrong." He swallowed hard. Most teachers don't. The simplicity of the statement made it land with brutal truth. She looked at him, really looked, seeing the exhaustion lining his eyes, the shadows of long days spent pretending everything was fine. "Most teachers," she said slowly, "are trying their best, but sometimes we miss things. Sometimes we forget to look closely." He nodded, but his expression didn't change. He wasn't trying to argue. He was simply stating reality. "I didn't start it," he whispered after a moment. I never wanted to fight anyone." "I know," she said. "I saw the footage." "Do they know? The school?" "They know now." He exhaled shakily. The sound caught somewhere between relief and grief. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, crumpled, as though crushed in a tight fist earlier and then smoothed out again. "My mom. She was going to sign the suspension form," he murmured. "She cried. I didn't know what to tell her." Anna felt a tremor of anger warm her cheeks. Not at Evan, but at the injustice that had nearly branded this boy as violent, unpredictable, dangerous. She took a slow breath, grounding herself. "Your mom won't have to sign anything," she assured him. "The committee will reverse their decision, and the school will take appropriate action against the students who hurt you." He looked up at her then, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something fragile, hope, maybe, or trust. It glimmered faintly, like a candle flame uncertain in a draft. But it was there. "What's going to happen to them?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. It was not a simple question. Punishment was never simple. Not for teenagers whose identities were still forming, nor for the ones they hurt along the way. She didn't want to lie, and she didn't want to promise justice in a system that often tangled justice in red tape. "They'll face consequences," she said eventually, "and the school will investigate the situation fully." He nodded, but she knew that wasn't the answer he wanted. What he really wanted was safety, certainty that this wouldn't happen again. Certainty that he wouldn't walk the halls tomorrow with fear as his constant companion. Certainty she couldn't give. The wind shifted, sending another cascade of leaves tumbling across the courtyard. Shadows lengthened. A distant bell chimed the end of after-school clubs. "You're not alone anymore," she said quietly. "Whatever comes next, I promise you that." His eyes glistened, but he blinked it away quickly. When he stood to leave, he hesitated, as if unsure whether he should thank her again or simply walk away. Instead he said, barely above a whisper, "Will tomorrow be different?" She looked at him, at the bruises forming beneath his sleeves, at the trembling breath he took. And though she wanted to say yes, wanted to promise the world, she answered honestly, "It will be the beginning of different." He nodded. Then he turned and walked toward the parking lot, shoulders hunched not from fear this time, but from the weight of processing everything that had happened. She watched him go until he reached a small silver sedan where a woman, his mother, she assumed, rose from the driver's seat and rushed to embrace him. Even from a distance, Anna felt the force of that hug, felt the tremor in the mother's hands as she cupped her son's face, felt the relief, the sorrow, the confusion. The sky darkened around them. Anna remained on the bench long after they drove away. The wind had grown colder, brushing a shiver down her spine. She finally rose, gathering her things, and walked back toward the school's entrance. The building loomed against the twilight, a silhouette of brick and glass, its windows reflecting the last hues of the dying sun. Inside, the hallways were dim but not silent. Custodians polished floors, leaving streaks of gleaming reflection behind. The intercom buzzed faintly as someone tested a system. Papers shuffled behind the closed door of the administrative office. She made her way to her classroom again and flicked on the light. The familiar scent of dry erase markers and old history books washed over her. She set her bag on the desk and sat down. The empty chairs seemed to watch her, waiting for tomorrow's lessons, oblivious to the turmoil hidden beneath their quiet surfaces. She opened her laptop and began typing an email, to the committee, to the counseling department, to administration. documenting what she had witnessed, what she had uncovered, what she felt needed to be done next. Policies, follow-ups, student safety measures. A call for conversation that extended beyond today's crisis. By the time she finished, the school was nearly silent. She closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and stood at the doorway one last time before stepping into the dark hallway. She paused, glancing toward the second floor, the place where everything had begun, and where everything would now begin to unravel further. Because this wasn't just about a fight. This wasn't just about a lie. This was about a system that had looked the other way too easily, too comfortably. As she stepped into the night, a new determination settled in her chest. Tomorrow would bring questions, anger, fallout. Tyler and his friends would be confronted. The school would have to respond. Parents would want answers. The truth would spread, and with it, consequences. A storm was forming on the horizon, and this was only the calm before it. With that heavy certainty, she closed her car door, started the engine, and drove off into the dark. Morning at Crestwood High arrived not with the sharp clang of urgency, but with a quiet unease that hovered like fog clinging stubbornly to the ground. Even before Anna stepped out of her car, she sensed it. An electric tension humming in the air, subtle enough to overlook yet undeniable to someone who had been waiting for it. The parking lot was dotted with clusters of students moving between cars or lingering near the entrance, their voices softer than usual, as if the very building listened to them now. She caught snippets as she passed. "Did you hear?" And "No way, that's not what I saw." And "My friend said there's another video." Rumor was a creature that fed itself, and today it had grown teeth. Anna closed her coat around her and walked toward the school's front doors. The sky above was awash of muted silver, clouds thick enough to mute the sun. It felt like the world held its breath, preparing itself for something inevitable. When she reached the entrance, she stopped briefly and looked up at the second-floor windows, the same hallway of truth, as she had dubbed it silently last night. The place where everything had gone wrong. The place where everything had begun to unravel. She stepped inside. Immediately, the noise washed over her. Students talking in rapid, nervous bursts. Backpacks slamming into lockers. Feet scuffing anxiously across tile. But beneath the surface, beneath the daily chaos, there was something sharper, like a blade hidden in cloth. Eyes tracked her as she walked, though students quickly pretended they hadn't looked when she met their gaze. Some whispered, some turned away, some seemed to wait for something. An announcement, a verdict, a shift. She moved through it like a ghost, each footstep echoing more loudly than she expected. Her first class wasn't for another 30 minutes, but she couldn't imagine sitting at her desk right now. She needed to understand the temperature of the room, the mood of the school, and she needed to find out what version of the story had taken root overnight. She didn't have to wait long. Near the lockers by the science wing, two girls stood arguing in hushed, frantic tones. She caught their words as she passed. "I swear, Tyler didn't start it," one girl insisted, hair bouncing as she shook her head. "I saw the clip. It's obvious." "That's the edited one," the other whispered fiercely. "My cousin's friend said there's a longer video, one the teachers found." "What longer video?" "I don't know, something from the school cameras. They say Evan was the one getting pushed, not the other way around." "That's not what Tyler said." "Maybe Tyler lied." The first girl scoffed. "Why would he lie?" The other girl hesitated, then answered in a voice so small it was almost swallowed by the hallway noise. "Because boys like him always lie about stuff like that." Anna walked faster. Further down the hall, near the vending machines, a group of boys clustered around a phone. "Dude, check this comment. Someone says Tyler's done for." "No way. My brother says the school never punishes the popular kids." "I heard Evan cried in the office yesterday." "So? Wouldn't you?" "Nah, I don't cry, but I'd be furious if everyone blamed me for something I didn't do." "So what's the truth, then?" "Who knows? Everyone's lying." Anna slowed. The boys stiffened, scattering a little at the sight of her. One of them stuffed his phone into his pocket as if afraid she'd confiscate it. She gave them all a nod, but said nothing. They watched her leave, their whispers resuming only once she disappeared around the corner. She reached her classroom and pushed the door open, letting the familiar scent of chalk dust and laminated posters ground her. But the calm didn't last long. A knock sounded almost immediately. She turned. It was Principal Donnelly. His face was pale, drawn tight around the mouth, as if he had slept poorly. His suit jacket hung slightly crooked on his shoulders, and the folder in his hand bulged with forms and reports that looked too heavy for what they represented. "Morning, Ms. Raymond," he said quietly. "Good morning, sir. May I come in?" She nodded, and he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He stood near her desk for a moment, collecting his thoughts before speaking. "There are developments," he began. "Word is spreading. I assume you've noticed." "I have," she said. "The students know something changed. They're sensing it. And by lunch, parents will be calling. Probably emailing. Definitely demanding answers." He rubbed his forehead wearily. "We need to make a statement." "You need to include the truth," Anna said calmly. He let out a breath, one that belonged equally to resignation and reluctant agreement. "We will." "Who have you spoken to so far?" she asked. "Security, guidance, Tyler's parents, Evan's parents, the superintendent." He paused. "It's a storm, Anna. A big one. It was always coming," she said. "Yesterday just gave it shape." He met her gaze then, really met it, with a look that carried both gratitude and the weight of someone who feared what telling the truth publicly might ignite. He cleared his throat. "Would you be willing to help mediate conversations today? Students trust you. They talk to you." "Of course," she said without hesitation. "There will also be a follow-up meeting after school. More formal, more complicated." He sighed. "I want you there." "I'll be there." He nodded again, then turned to leave. But before he opened the door, he paused. "One more thing," he said without looking at her. "Tyler's parents, they're not taking this well. I didn't expect them to." "No," he said softly. "Neither did I." Then he left. The moment the door shut, Anna pressed her hands against the desk and exhaled slowly, steadying the tremor that threatened to unravel her resolve. She had known this would be hard, but she had not anticipated how deeply the truth would cut into the fabric of the school community. She did not fear conflict. She feared apathy. And today she would face neither. Today, Crestwood High was awake. By the time the first bell rang, her classroom had filled with students buzzing like an unsettled hive. She could see it in their eyes, hear it in the rustle of their backpacks and the way they whispered urgently behind hands. Even the usual troublemakers sat straighter than normal, scanning the room as if waiting for a signal or revelation. "Good morning," she said, but her greeting was swallowed by their murmurs. Eventually, the class quieted, but the stillness was brittle. She didn't begin the planned lesson. Instead, she walked to the center of the room and folded her hands in front of her. "I know what everyone is thinking about," she said gently. "And I know there are rumors, questions, anger, confusion, dozens of eyes fixed on her." She continued, "I cannot share confidential details, but I will tell you this. Not everything you saw online tells the full story, and what happened yesterday is being reviewed thoroughly and carefully. That is all I can say." A girl in the back raised her hand. "Miss, did the video lie?" Anna shook her head. "Videos don't lie, but they don't always tell the truth either." The classroom inhaled collectively. Another hand shot up. "Is Evan in trouble?" "No," Anna said softly. "He's not." The wave of emotion that followed rippled silently across the room. Some students looked relieved, some perplexed, some guilty. A boy near the window looked down at his desk, tracing a line across the wood with his finger. Then someone whispered, "What about Tyler?" Anna paused. "That is being handled. But is he getting suspended?" "I cannot share disciplinary decisions," she said firmly, though her heart ached with the uncertainty in their voices. "What I can tell you is this. The school is committed to making sure everyone feels safe here, and that includes holding people accountable." Silence again, this time heavier. She dismissed class early to give them space to breathe. As they trickled out, some lingered to ask small questions, others avoided eye contact, and a few seemed unexpectedly shaken, as if discovering that the world they walked in wasn't as straightforward as they wanted to believe. Between classes, the hallways grew louder, the whispers more fervent. A rumor emerged that Tyler had been suspended for a week. Another claimed he had been expelled. Neither was true, but truth had never been the currency of hallway gossip. At lunch, the tension peaked. Anna sat at a table near the edge of the cafeteria, monitoring students as required. Evan entered quietly, tray in hand, scanning the room for somewhere to sit. Conversation slowed, not universally, but enough for him to notice. His shoulders tensed, his steps faltered, her heart cracked at the sight. Before she could move, a boy named Jonah, one of her former students, stood from a nearby table and waved him over. "Hey, Evan," Jonah called, shifting his lunch tray to make space. "Sit with us." Evan hesitated, then nodded. The cafeteria resumed its noise, but Anna caught the brief smile that flickered across Evan's face. Small but real, like a growing flame. But peace was temporary. Not 5 minutes later, the cafeteria doors slammed open. Marcus entered, alone, anxious, rubbing the back of his neck in uneven motions. His eyes darted across the room as though searching for Tyler, only to remember that Tyler wasn't here today. A few tables away, students stiffened at the sight of him. Others pointed. Someone whispered too loudly, "That's one of the guys who pushed Evan." Marcus flinched. Another voice chimed in, "I heard he filmed the whole thing." That wasn't him. It was totally him. No, it was someone else. Marcus took a step backward, then another. The whispers grew like a rising tide. He lowered his gaze, face burning red, and beelined for the exit. His tray clattered into a trash bin as he fled. Anna stood, heart pounding. No matter what Marcus had done or failed to do, this wasn't the way. She followed him into the hallway, but he had already disappeared around the corner. A storm indeed, she thought. The day continued like that. Pockets of confrontation, whispered accusations, confusion spreading like ink in water. Tyler's absence only added fuel, making him a ghost lurking behind every rumor. Owen avoided eye contact with everyone. Marcus didn't return to class. By the final bell, Anna felt drained, every nerve buzzing. She gathered her papers and walked toward the administrative wing for the after-school meeting. Parents had already begun arriving, some angry, some frightened, some simply demanding answers. A woman with tight curls paced near the office door, muttering into her phone. A father crossed his arms so hard they looked fused to his chest. Evan's mother sat quietly in a chair, her eyes red-rimmed but resolute. Tyler's parents had not yet arrived, but she could imagine their fury well enough. Principal Donnelly greeted her with a nod and gestured toward the conference room. Inside, the air felt dense, charged with the weight of what was coming. As Anna took her seat at the long table, she noticed something she had not expected. Evan was already there. He sat beside his mother, hands clasped tightly, expression calm but fragile. When he saw Anna, he offered a tiny nod. Acknowledgement, gratitude, fear, all woven together. She nodded back. The room filled slowly, chairs scraping the floor. The superintendent entered, followed by counselors, staff, and finally, Tyler's parents. A pair of thunderclouds ready to strike. Tyler trailed behind them, shoulders hunched, jaw tight, arrogance cracked. He glanced briefly at Evan. Evan looked away. The meeting had not yet begun, but already the air simmered with tension. Anna inhaled. Here, in this room, truth would finally confront everything that stood against it. And when the storm broke, nothing at Crestwood High would ever be quite the same. The conference room felt too small for the number of people, too quiet for the volume of emotions gathered inside it, and too bright for the shadows that lingered beneath every gaze. The long rectangular table, polished to a sterile sheen, reflected uneasy faces like a distorted mirror. Papers rustled softly, pens clicked, A chair scraped harshly against the floor as someone adjusted their seating, the sound cutting through the silence like a blade. Evan sat at the far end of the table beside his mother, shrinking into himself just a little more with every minute that passed. His fingers twisted nervously in his lap, then planted flat on the table as though he remembered he shouldn't fidget. His mother kept one hand on his arm, thumb gently stroking across his sleeve, a steadying rhythm for a boy trembling beneath a calm exterior. Across from them sat Tyler with his parents, Mark and Olivia Brooks, both dressed in stiff business attire as though the meeting were a corporate confrontation rather than a matter involving their son's actions. Tyler looked older today, but not in maturity. More in the way guilt, resentment, and fear hollowed out the spaces beneath his eyes. He kept shifting in his seat, unable to settle, glancing around the room with a mix of irritation and unease. Anna sat 2 seats down from Evan, close enough to offer silent reassurance but far enough not to overwhelm him. She could feel how tightly the air was wound, how fragile the hush before the storm truly was. Principal Donnelly sat at the head of the table, flipping through a folder, though it was clear he wasn't reading anything, just trying to gather courage. The superintendent, Dr. Helen Whitmore, stood near the whiteboard with her hands clasped behind her back, her demeanor controlled but pointed. She was a woman known for her precision and her intolerance for chaos. This situation was exactly the kind of disruption she despised, yet her gaze held no impatience, only a heavy seriousness. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured and resonant. "Thank you all for being here. What happened yesterday has raised serious concerns, not only about student safety, but about how truth is perceived, shared, and distorted within our school community." Her eyes swept the room. They lingered on Anna longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement of the catalyst she had become. "We're here to address what occurred," Dr. Whitmore continued, "and to determine appropriate steps moving forward." She paused. "Mr. Donnelly, please begin." The principal cleared his throat, opened the folder, and began summarizing the incident, careful to present the facts neutrally. But tension snapped alive when he mentioned the student-filmed video. Immediately, Olivia Brooks leaned forward, her voice slicing into the air. "That video clearly shows Evan attacking Tyler." Evan flinched. Mark Brooks nodded sharply. "We've seen it multiple times." Tyler was defending himself. Donnelly held up a hand. "Mrs. and Mr. Brooks, please allow me to finish. The student video is incomplete." Mark scoffed. "Incomplete? It shows what matters." "No," another voice said. Anna's steady, resolute. "It shows the last 10 seconds of a longer sequence. Nothing more." Olivia shot her a sharp glare. "And you know this because what? You've decided our son is lying?" "I know because I saw the hallway camera footage," Anna replied calmly. The full event, a beat of silence. Then everything erupted. Tyler stiffened, his jaw locking. His mother stood halfway from her seat. "You searched for surveillance footage without our knowledge?" "It is the school's footage," Dr. Whitmore said firmly, stepping in. "And it is our duty to review it when a disciplinary issue arises." Olivia faltered, but only for a moment. "That video better show something substantial, because what I've seen is a teacher trying to pick apart a situation that already has answers." Anna inhaled slowly, maintaining composure. "I would not be here if the footage didn't matter." Mark narrowed his eyes. "Show us." It wasn't a request. It was a challenge. Donnelly nodded to the technician waiting near the laptop connected to the projector. The lights dimmed slightly as the screen lit up. Evan tensed, and Anna placed her hand near, but not on, his, offering presence, not pressure. The footage began to play. There was the hallway, quiet, empty. Then Evan entered the frame. Anna felt the collective shift in the room as everyone leaned forward. Tyler and his friends appeared at the far end, laughing, jostling one another casually. The first shove played across the screen, not violent but clearly intentional. Owen's tug on the backpack followed. The spill of books, the laughter, the second shove, the collision, and then the moment the student-filmed video would begin, the moment Tyler's anger overtook his embarrassment. Through it all, Evan never raised his hands. Never initiated contact. Never stopped trying to walk away. When the video ended, the room held its breath. Evan stared down at the table, blinking rapidly, his lower lip trembling from holding back the heaviness swelling behind his eyes. His mother pressed her hands to her mouth, horrified and heartbroken by the truth laid bare. Tyler's parents sat frozen. Mark's face flushed red, not with shame, but with anger. Olivia looked as if she had been struck, her jaw hanging open before snapping shut. "That," she sputtered. "That doesn't mean he didn't provoke something earlier." She turned sharply to Tyler. "Tyler, you tell them right now." But Tyler didn't speak. Mark slammed his palm on the table. "Tyler, say something." The boy swallowed hard. His eyes darted to Evan, not with cruelty this time, but with fear, regret, something heavy and complicated that tangled in his throat and refused to come out. "Tyler," Dr. Whitmore said gently, "did Evan provoke you in any way before what we saw in the video?" Silence. "Did Evan hit you first?" She pressed. Tyler stared at the table. His mother's voice cracked. "Tyler, please." His answer came out as barely a whisper. "No." The room exhaled, some in relief, some in anger, some in disbelief. It was Mark who exploded first. "You told us he shoved you." Tyler's voice shook. I didn't want to look bad." Olivia recoiled as if the words had physically hit her. "Look bad? Tyler, you dragged us into a meeting with the superintendent. You let half the school believe a lie." Tyler dropped his head into his hands. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "That's the problem," Anna murmured. "Most lies don't mean to grow, but they do." Dr. Whitmore lifted a hand for silence. "This meeting is not to punish in anger. It is to address harm and prevent further harm." Evan's mother finally spoke, her voice trembling but controlled. "My son came home yesterday terrified, humiliated, accused of something he didn't do. He thought no one would believe him. Not the students, not the teachers, not even us. Do you know what that does to a child?" Olivia tried to respond, but the words tangled, choked, and fell apart. Tears welled in her eyes, though she blinked them back fiercely as though refusing to show vulnerability. Dr. Whitmore nodded solemnly. "We understand the gravity of this situation. Tyler, your behavior was unacceptable. There will be consequences." Mark leaned forward. "What consequences?" "That is for the school board to finalize," she replied. "But they will include suspension, mandatory counseling, and participation in restorative justice if the Morales family agrees to it." Anna watched Evan closely. He sat still, processing everything, absorbing the storm around him. For a moment, he looked like a boy standing inches away from a tidal wave, trying to decide whether to run or stand firm. Finally, he whispered, "I don't want anyone else to get hurt." Everyone turned to him. Evan swallowed, staring at his hands. "I don't want them to hurt someone else, or each other, or me. I just want it to stop." His mother squeezed his arm, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You don't have to protect them, sweetheart." "I'm not," Evan said softly. "I just know what it feels like to be blamed for something that gets bigger and bigger until you can't breathe." The room fell silent, stunned by the quiet wisdom of a child who had spent too much time understanding pain. Dr. Whitmore regarded him with intense, empathetic eyes. "Evan, thank you. Your voice matters here, and we will make sure you are protected." Then she turned to Tyler. "You owe Evan an apology." Tyler's lips parted, but no words formed. He looked paralyzed, torn between pride and guilt. But finally, after several long seconds, he forced himself to look up at Evan. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I shouldn't have lied. I shouldn't have." He broke off, tears gathering in his eyes. Evan nodded slowly, though his expression remained cautious, unsure how to receive a confession so late and so tangled in conflicting motives. Olivia placed a hand on Tyler's back, but he winced as though her touch made the reality worse. Dr. Whitmore closed the folder in front of her. "We will handle the formal decisions in writing. For now, I suggest we all take a moment to breathe." Chairs shifted. Papers were gathered. But no one stood yet. Everyone felt the lingering heaviness, the emotional aftershock. Anna watched Evan out of the corner of her eye. He tugged at the sleeve of his sweater, grounding himself. The trembling had faded. In its place was something fragile but growing, resilience. When the meeting finally adjourned, families filed out slowly into the hallway, leaving behind the faint buzz of fluorescent lights and the echoes of things said and unsaid. Outside the room, the world felt different. Evan walked beside his mother toward the exit, shoulders straighter than the night before. Anna followed a few steps behind, unsure whether to intervene or allow the moment to settle on its own. As they reached the main hall, Evan turned back. His voice was soft, but sure. "Ms. Raymond?" She stopped. "Thank you," he said, "for showing them." She smiled, but sorrow still lingered in her chest. "All I did was turn on the light. Evan, you were the one standing in the dark." He absorbed the words and nodded, his eyes meeting hers with a steadiness she had not seen before. But as he turned to leave, something caught Anna's attention. Tyler stood alone near the drinking fountain, watching Evan walk away, not with resentment this time, but with the haunted realization of someone seeing the consequences of his actions reflected back at him. Anna knew this wasn't the end. Not for Evan. Not for Tyler. Not for Crestwood High. The storm had broken, yes, but the aftermath would shape everything that came next. The halls hummed with conversations waiting to happen, conflicts to resolve, wounds to heal. The late winter sun dipped low behind Crestwood High, casting long shadows across the parking lot like dark fingers stretched over concrete. The meeting had ended nearly an hour ago, but its echoes still pulsed in the hallways, vibrating through the walls, settling into every corner of the building like dust that refused to be swept away. Most staff had gone home. The school felt suspended in an unnatural hush, as though holding its breath to see what the aftermath of truth would bring. Anna walked slowly down the empty second-floor corridor, her footsteps soft against the polished tiles. The hallway was almost painfully quiet compared to the chaos of the day before, or even the tension of that morning. She passed the spot where the spilled books had scattered. The memory of them felt hauntingly vivid, as if she could still see pages fluttering across the floor like frightened birds. She paused, letting her hand rest on one of the lockers, cool metal beneath her palm, imagining the tremor in Evan's hands as he bent to gather his things. The school would return to its usual noise tomorrow, but tonight silence reigned. As she continued walking, she noticed a lone figure sitting on the floor, knees pulled to his chest, head bowed. For a heartbeat, she didn't recognize him. The posture was too small, too fragile. But when he lifted his face slightly, the fluorescent lights caught the brim of a familiar baseball cap lying beside him. "Tyler." She stopped a few feet away, unsure whether to approach or give him space. His breathing was shallow, uneven. She could hear it from where she stood. "Tyler," she said softly. He flinched at the sound of his name. Slowly, he wiped at his face with the sleeve of his jacket, but the redness in his eyes betrayed him. He didn't look proud. He didn't look defiant. He looked like a boy whose world had just cracked open, and he was staring into the pieces, unsure how to put any of them back together. "Can I sit?" she asked gently. He didn't answer, but he nodded just barely. She lowered herself onto the floor beside him, not too close, but near enough that he knew he wasn't alone in the vast, echoing hallway. For a moment, neither spoke. She waited. Finally, his voice came out hoarse. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." "I believe you," she said, "but it still happened." He winced as if the words pushed deeper into a wound he had been trying to hide from himself. He swallowed hard. "Everyone always thinks I'm strong, that I can handle anything, that nothing gets to me. But when he bumped into me, when I fell, when everyone was watching," his breath trembled. "I just snapped. I didn't want to look weak." The words hung between them like something raw and dangerous. "You thought hurting him would make you stronger?" she asked quietly. Tyler's shoulders curled inward. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking. I just didn't want to be laughed at." Anna's heart ached. Not in sympathy for the harm he caused, but for the realization that pain had been festering inside him too, masked behind arrogance and swagger. Not an excuse, never an excuse, but an explanation. Human, flawed, heartbreaking. You know, she said softly, strength isn't about never falling. It's about standing up the right way after you do. He stared down at his hands. Everyone hates me now. No, she said gently. They're angry. They're confused. They're hurt. But they don't hate you. People are more complicated than that. How do you know? He whispered. She looked at him, really looked at him. Beneath the bravado, the anger, the bullying behavior, he was still just a boy who had lost his way. Because I've been doing this a long time, she said. And I know that teenagers make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones. But I also know they can change. Tyler swallowed hard, his voice breaking. I don't know if I can fix this. You can, she said firmly. But it won't be easy, and it won't be fast. You'll have to sit with what you did. Take responsibility. Do the work. Grow from it. But you can fix pieces of it. Little by little. He closed his eyes, tears slipping down unchecked this time. I'm scared. I know, she whispered. That's the first step. She stood slowly and reached her hand out. He stared at it, hesitant, then placed his trembling fingers into hers and let her pull him to his feet. When he was steady again, she released him. Go home, she said softly. Rest. Talk to your parents. Tomorrow is the beginning of something new. For you, for Evan, for all of us. He nodded. He looked younger, smaller, but no longer hiding. When he walked away, he paused at the end of the hall and looked back at her once. Eyes swollen, expression uncertain. But he nodded again before turning the corner. The hallway swallowed the silence once more. Anna exhaled, long and slow, letting the tension loosen in her chest. She walked toward her classroom to gather her things. She flicked off the lights and stood in the doorway, absorbing the familiar stillness one last time before heading down the stairs and out into the fading evening. Outside, the sky had deepened into shades of purple and navy, the first stars emerging timidly. The breeze was cool, brushing against her skin like fragile hope. In the distance, a car engine hummed. A mother picking up her child, perhaps, or a teacher heading home after a long day. She stepped into the parking lot, but paused when she noticed a pair of figures standing under the lampost's glow. Evan and his mother. They were talking quietly, their silhouettes framed in soft yellow light. Evan's shoulders no longer sagged. He stood upright now, looking not defeated, but contemplative. Stronger somehow. When he saw Anna, his face brightened. Not with the fleeting gratitude of earlier, but with something steadier, something that felt like trust. His mother offered Anna a warm, emotional smile. Thank you, she said, her voice thick. You saw him today. You really saw him. Anna shook her head gently. He let himself be seen. Evan stepped forward, his hands tucked into his pockets. Miss Raymond, he said, and for the first time, there was no tremor in his voice, no hesitation. I think I'm going to be okay. Anna felt the sting of tears behind her eyes, but not from sorrow this time. From something deeper, something like pride. I know you will, she said softly. You already are. His mother placed a hand on his shoulder, and he leaned into her just slightly. Still a child, but also something more now. Something growing. Good night, Ms. Raymond, he said. Good night, Evan. They walked to their car, and Anna stood there as the taillights glowed red, then vanished beyond the curve of the road. The school behind her was dark now, looming but calm. A quiet sentinel that had held too many secrets, too many stories told in whispers and edited videos and trembling confessions. But tonight, one story had ended truthfully, painfully, beautifully, and maybe, just maybe, something new would begin because of it. She took a deep breath, feeling the crispness of the evening settle in her lungs. Then she walked to her car, unlocked the door, and slid inside. For a moment, she rested her forehead against the steering wheel, letting the final wave of emotion wash through her. Relief, grief, hope, all tangled together. As she started the engine, A single thought settled gently in her mind, clear and luminous. Sometimes, changing the course of a child's life doesn't come from grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from choosing to see them fully, honestly, when no one else does. She drove away, leaving the quiet school behind, but carrying its stories with her. And somewhere in the still night, in the silence after all the storms had passed, something new bloomed. Not victory, not absolution, but healing, a beginning. And for Crestwood High, for Evan, for Tyler, and for Anna, that was enough.